Chapter 5 More Adventures at Sea and on Land. Our next destination was London, where we arrived October 6, 1865. We soon had our cargo unloaded, and then we went to a clean coal dock in Hartlepool, where we took on a cargo of coal consigned to Kiel. While in London, we were somewhat unfortunate, as two of our most able seamen deserted, and we hired in their stead two of the most slothful dummies I had ever come in contact with on a ship. One of them was a Frenchman and the other was Irish, but the worst of it was they were dirty and full of lice. We have eventually arrived at our destination, though we were somewhat tired, having to do the extra work on account of the two new men we had with us who did not live up to the regulations that they had hired out to do. Our ship had 5 different nationalities at the time, and that we had docked at the harbor in Kiel on November 23, 1865. Kiel, Germany was to me the loveliest place on the face of the earth. It was the place where just a few months before I had arrived there more dead than alive, and now I was full of life and energy. I had a kindly feeling towards a certain hospital there for what it did for me. The hospital was a paradise to me. I also wanted to see the good nurse, Dora, again and show her my appreciation what had been done by her. But I did not get one chance to see her, for I was to go on another errand and had not the time to visit her. The next day, I received a letter from my dear mother stating that my father was still alive, but he had such a desire to see me once more while in the flesh. I realized that this would undoubtedly be my last privilege of seeing him, so determined on a trip home. I applied to and received permission from my captain to take the trip. I soon got myself ready and journeyed right to my folks, and there tried to cheer my parents and be of some consolation to my brothers and sisters. My father was still alive when I arrived home, but was sinking very fast. He was suffering from lung disease and passed to the great beyond on January 17, 1866. At the age of 60 years. At his graveside stood his wife and 10 children, 2 sons and 8 daughters. Until my father's dying day, I had kept my vow to him, and God did bless me and help me in doing so. Before my father died, I bought the place where I was born, for 400 shillings, approximately $100, and then gave it to my mother to live in as long as she wanted to. I saw to it that they all had plenty of things that one needed to keep soul and body together. I saw to it that my mother and sisters did not go without the things that they needed all the days of their life. I may say here that my family always looked to me to take leadership in nearly all vital things in regard to family affairs, though I was much younger than many of them. My captain had asked me to come back again as soon as my visit was over, but unfortunately I was unable to go back at this time. When I had arrived in the land of my birth, I knew I would be obligated to serve my country in the capacity of a soldier before I could leave again. This law is compulsory on every son born in the Kingdom of Denmark. I therefore reported myself at once to the nearest official. I left with him my seafaring book, and I knew well that I would have to serve my time in the Navy. I was ordered to do so about the middle of March 1866. I was assigned to the battleship Jutland and was out for 7 months. In this time, we made a trip to the Canary Islands, Madeira, Portugal, Lisbon, Portugal, and also to England. We were 400 men on board, and I was assigned to serve as a full-fledged sailmaker and had full charge over this. I also was rifle marksman for the crew and the officer in charge of our signal codes, which we used to signal other ships when we saluted the other boats and any other message we wish to convey to them. The 7 months went by very rapidly, and I rather enjoyed my service, though the pay was small. I saw a lot and learned many things that became useful to me in later life. I was mustered out of the Navy with a letter of the best of character and with a recommendation of the highest honors given to an ordinary seaman on October 1, 1866. I will here state that throughout my life I've always tried to give the best service possible, and it had always paid me well, both in money and advancement, and have never lost anything thereby, even if I had to spend some of my own time in doing it. I again came to Copenhagen, and there hired out on a ship by the name of Havern N, registered from Copenhagen. We made a trip from there to the Faroes Islands. Everything went along all right, and we had no serious trouble, though I nearly fell from one of the top yards of the mainmast, being caught hold of some of the rigging and saved myself from a bad fall. We did, however, have some storm and had to take shelter in Frederiksvern, Norway, and later to Frederikshavn, Jutland. On account of the stormy conditions, we again arrived in Copenhagen on our return trip just at Christmas. I then came on home and visited my mother and sisters. During the summer, one of my sisters had died, so there was again sorrow in the family, and I tried to be of comfort to them as best I could. I stayed around home most of this winter, visiting with friends, fixing things up around my mother's place. About the 1st of March, 1867, I again began to get restless for my old love, the sea, and then went again to Copenhagen, and there hired out on a bark ship by the name of Triton. Lars L. Eriksson was captain of the good ship. I got a job as a full-fledged sailmaker. I have never had any trouble to get a job whenever I wanted one, for always had I the best of clearances from previous ships I had worked on. There were 11 men on this bark ship. We sailed from Copenhagen to Danzig, Prussia, and there took on a cargo of rye consigned to the London market, where we arrived shortly after. From London we sailed to Newcastle, took on a cargo of salt, and then sailed to Narva, Russia. When we had our load out, we reloaded with lumber for Grimsby, England. At Grimsby, we loaded with a cargo of coal and set out for Copenhagen. Here I took a contract to unload the ship of its cargo, and I made some money on the side. I was getting a regular salary, of course, so the side money sure came in handy to me at this time. The captain nearly always contracted the unloading of his ship, thereby relieving the crew of this undesirable work. We took on a ballast and sailed to Ystad, Sweden, for a load of lumber. These Swedish timbers were to be taken off from a stranded vessel on the Swedish coast. We soon had our load transferred, which was to be delivered to Hull, England. We were gliding along very nicely until we came to the mouth of the Skagen. Here we anchored in 25 fathoms of water with our great anchor and 75 fathoms of heavy cable or chain. We laid here until the next day when the wind changed, so that we were in great danger of being driven ashore near Frederikshavn. We had to clear our sails and get away from our anchor and set our course toward Copenhagen. Our great trouble now was that we had to sail right hard starboard in order to avoid encountering a bank and wreck our ship. This bank is known as Caber Banks. Many ships do not clear this bank during quite a few storms and are wrecked. The waves were driven by a ferocious wind so that they were nothing but spray, and the sea was churned to a mist so that we could not see 100 feet in any direction. We knew we were nearly aground many times, judging from the huge broadside waves that were dashing over the ship. The light ship that is anchored on the bank here to give warning of nearness of the banks was torn loose from its moorings and driven ashore and wrecked, so we had nothing to warn us of the nearness of land and danger. With a catastrophe of this kind looming, a sailor's mind is naturally turned toward home and its comforts, to his wife and children, to his mother and father and brothers and sisters. Even his future hope is at such critical time hidden in an instant in the bottom of the sea, in these black, stormy nights, and no one knows whether he is alive or not until the ship is reported missing, and then he probably is never found or claimed by his own. But if his life's lamp is to burn no more, he has had this assurance, that he has been instrumental in the world's transportation affairs, and knowing that he has been, in a small way, a part of this system in the world of bringing from one country to country and from nation to nation those things that mankind are in need of to keep soul and body together. This was one of the hardest places and the closest calls I have ever been in 10 years' experience of my sea career. We, however, cleared the bank. Some of our storm sails were completely torn to rags. The next day, toward evening, we reached and anchored near Copenhagen. We had to stay here a few days until we could get an adjustment from the insurance company for our losses. I had to get very busy mending sails and making new ones. The captain took me ashore and to his own house, and there taught me every detail in the art of making sails, and advanced me from second steersman to that of first steersman of his ship, and then put me in full charge of everything while he stayed home with little Sina, as he called his wife. We had everything in readiness in 10 days and again set sail with a good wind toward Hull, where we arrived in good time. We soon had our cargo of coal for Copenhagen, where we arrived 3 weeks before Christmas. We unloaded the ship and then placed it in the dry dock for the winter.